Awesome. Welcome back. Here we are, season 2, calling all investors live with Caeli Ridge. For those that are just joining, thank you very much for coming back. We had an unbelievable season 1. We had over 70 different episodes covering things from A to Z, literally. Today's presentation is going to be an all-engaging episode. So for those that are just coming in right now, this is going to be a little bit of a different format. We want to make sure that you're leveraging the Zoom webinar platform. We had some serious shenanigans that were just stupid and unnecessary last season. So we got rid of all that stuff. We're on to better technology and a better platform. And most importantly, we want to make sure that you're getting the information that you need on an ongoing basis. If you're not part of the Ridge Lending Group community, shame on you. You need to get over there and join the conversations and get the information as you need it. Today, we're going to have an open dialogue. So it's all about you being engaged with Caeli. We want to go over what is going to show you how to get prepared best to purchase properties today. And then there's also going to be an open conversation about how to explain how other people are becoming prepared for what they're doing to identify their properties and their markets and where they're trying to find their next opportunity. And who better than to get you talking than Caeli Ridge. So there we are, Caeli. Let's go ahead and let's get engaged.
Let's do this. Thank you, Larry Bailey. Happy New Year, everybody. I love that I'm seeing so many familiar names over on my right. Larry, is there a way I can see people? Maybe it's just my setting. Let's look at my view. Hold on. I want to see these faces. There it is. I found it. I'm smarter than I look. Maybe not. There's my gallery. Well, maybe you can help me with this later. I just see you and me. So happy to be here. Season 2. I think it's so cool I get to say that, right? We're in season 2. I don't think we can be canceled. I think I'd have to cancel myself, wouldn't I? Unless I'm a jackass, and in which case then that would be on me.
We're not going to cancel you, Caeli.
No, okay. Okay, so today I really wanted to spend some time with you guys, and Larry had said open dialogue, and I'd love to have some feedback. Please engage with me. I really want to get this for all of us to be communicating together and coming up with our plan for 2023. You know, I'm in this space, right? And I'm living and eating and breathing it as always. And it's interesting to me, over the last couple of weeks especially, I've been noticing the news outlets and different publications and ways in which I'm getting my information. The sentiment is all over the board, right? I can't tell from one to the next who's going to say that housing prices are going to stay the same, or they're going to go up, or they're going to come down, and interest rates are going to go up, or they're going to come down. I have to assume that from your perspective, you guys, I mean, it's got to be tenfold, right? Wherever you're getting your information, if it's from several different sources, my assumption is that you're seeing some of the same stuff. So what is it? Are housing prices coming down? Are interest rates going up? Are they coming down? So I want to kind of talk about some of those things. But before we get into that, let's talk about who's prepared. I wish I could see everybody and kind of do a show of hands. Is there a way? Yeah, go ahead.
So Larry. I was going to say, for those that are just joining, again, it's a beginning of new season, and we're using a Zoom webinar. So your videos are turned off. And so that's the reason why, Caeli, you're not seeing everybody's face. So it's a little bit different. So I apologize for that experience. But for those that are in here, you can use the Zoom and go ahead and raise your hand. You'll see a button at the very bottom of your panel. It just says raise hand. And that'll give me a chance to identify, like John Curtis just raised his hand. Thank you very much for doing that. So we want to make sure that you're raising your hand if you have any questions, or if you have any feedback to what you're looking for. Also, make sure you can use the chat. So there's a big webinar chat button down there. What this will allow me to do is to call you out, and at a good spot, Caeli, we can go ahead and allow the attendees to speak.
Perfect. So my first question for everybody, and please, for any of those that are willing and feel comfortable engaging, I'd really like to hear from you. What have you been doing to prepare for what I believe, this is my sentiment, this is my prediction for 2023, is going to be the best buyer's market that we've seen in quite some time? What are you guys doing? What have you been doing to be prepared for taking advantage as real estate investors to acquire property this year? Anybody? Raise of hands. Larry will unmute you. I want to hear what you guys have been doing, and then I want to offer my own take and advice.
So if you're trying to figure out how to work it, at the very bottom of the panel, you can see where you can raise your hand, or you can use the chat if you're not in a spot where you can talk, but you still want to contribute to the conversation. So no one's gone out on a limb yet. Actually, Nancy and Michelle. Who
There's
do you want
my
to call
girls.
first? So Nancy, we'll call Nancy because she's
Nancy
first. Nancy, yeah, it's all you.
Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I was really looking forward to this, Caeli. How are you?
Thank you, Nancy. Likewise, I love seeing your name as the first one that popped in here. I'm so good. Thank you for asking. I'm excited for this year. I'm excited for these discussions. I think that the community is going to be more valuable than ever to investors, because I really intend on keeping us all engaged, and that you raise your hand is important to me. I really want to get more of that from our community so that all of us are having these discussions together. So it's
Great.
not just in a vacuum. So please.
So I'm quite aware of the change in the market. It's like a flip over from 6 months ago. And suddenly things are getting more affordable. And I mean, I have been watching. The main thing I've been doing is watching and reading like a fiend about everything that's going on with predictions for inflation. It's very varied. But the key thing I'm trying to do is figure out where I'm getting money this year, Caeli.
So what markets can you, Nance, can I ask a couple of questions? So what markets are you most focused in right now?
I like Pennsylvania, and I'm also noticing for the first time in many years, opportunities in Washington, D.C., which has been almost impossible for rental because of the, it's like a very mature market, and you really get your money out of things by appreciation than by rental. But I'm seeing opportunities in Washington, D.C. that I haven't seen for, I don't know, 2015 or so, long time.
Yeah,
So,
you said that the light switch, right? It just kind of flipped one day that the housing prices were just out of control.
6 months.
Yeah.
Totally
So
different picture.
let me ask you this question. So as you're starting to see some of that, and I'll just quickly interject, guys, I am very bullish on the buyer's market. I know that there's sentiment out there that says that housing prices are going to stay. They may even continue to go up a little bit. I am the converse of that. I absolutely do not subscribe to that. I think that everything is market specific, but I absolutely believe that housing prices are going to continue to deteriorate, depending on how much, depends on the market, of course, but I do think that that buyer's market is going to be a great opportunity for all of us this year. But Nancy, my question is, so as you're seeing some of those changes in the different markets that you're considering, have you taken the time to do the math with the current interest rates, which, by the way, are a little bit better today? But I think my question is, and I'm kind of leading you guys to your own conclusions, really, is what my objective is here. But as we start to see the values come down or the price points come down and we can negotiate a little bit more, are you looking at how the impact of the rates that we've seen increase for 2022, how that shift has also taken place and where our cash flows land as a result?
Well, I'll tell you, in my case, I'm thinking about taking cash out of properties I already own. And for me, that decrease in housing prices has some concern for me in terms of what I can get in a cash out. So no, I haven't done the math yet. I honestly haven't. There are just too many variables that I just don't have the chops to calculate for at this point.
Let's be sure that you and I connect at some point this week or later today, whatever, and do that. Maybe next week we'll spend some time, if you're up for it, Nance, and just kind of go through a scenario for everybody to kind of look. Okay. But you actually led me to my next point, in that, there's no I told you so here. Okay, hindsight is always 20/20. I have been wrong more times than I care to admit to any of you about interest rates or house prices, or making the wrong move in real estate. I've learned some valuable lessons as a result. But where I was leading for that is that while we're going to have some real great opportunities in acquisition, those of us that didn't take advantage of the home prices, and maybe, as interest rates climbed last year, everybody kind of got a little bit freaked out and they didn't want to, refinance their 3% or 4% interest rates, their 5% interest rates, because rates were up in the 6s and the 7s, et cetera. And now they may not be in a position to do that. This is a prime example of analysis paralysis, right? Sitting on the sidelines and kind of waiting for the perfect storm, when in fact, there's always a perfect opportunity in real estate. There just is. Now, will that be in the markets that you've always been in? Will that be for a cash out refinance? No, you have to keep open and available to a real serious real estate investor is going to find the opportunities. So going back to the cash out refinance and the housing prices that are maybe deterring some of you now, let alone what, last year, whatever you were feeling about interest rates, I think that that's going to continue to be on the rise. So as a precipice of that piece of our discussion today, I would tell you that if you haven't yet, and you have a substantial amount of equity in your home, or you have a free and clear property that you've just kind of hesitated on, you really need to be looking at it now, and you need to be doing the math, right? How many times do I have to say this? Probably more times than you guys care to hear. You really want to do the math, crunch the numbers. What kind of equity can you harvest? How much do you think you're going to yield? What is going to be the cost of that leverage? And then what is going to be the return on the flip side? Right? It's not as complicated as I think a lot of times we make it out to be. And the math will not lie. Now, there's going to be variables in there that we have to make some assumptions on, or we're kind of taking data and gathering as much as we can to come up with informed decisions. But the more data we can gather, the more measured our decisions can be, and the least amount of risk that we're going to be engaging on, the better, right? That's the whole thing. Anyway, thank you so much for that, Nancy. Anybody else have anything to share that they? Yeah, go, Larry.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Of course, it's the first show of the new season, and of course, new technology, so things go sideways. So chat is disabled. So so that's the bad news. The good news is the Q&A works, and we've gotten a lot of great questions.
Okay.
And so for everyone on there, again, we'll figure out the chat piece. And in any event, we did have a Michelle. So Michelle, I'm gonna take you off of mute here, so allow to talk. So Michelle, did you remember what you were going to say a few minutes ago?
Yes, I actually jotted it down so I wouldn't forget.
Thank you for doing that.
I would have done, Michelle.
So yes, I'm ready, and I am excited to say that we actually did a cash out refi on 2 properties with Ridge Lending, our first, back in July.
Yay.
So yeah, so
Good for
we
you.
actually took those funds. My husband is a builder, so we took those funds and we started building a property to sell. So the property finally got finished and everything, went on the market, and I think like 3 weeks before it went on the market, that's when things started going down.
Values.
And yeah, values started going down. So we actually dropped the house from 380,000 to 325. So it's been sitting on the market now for maybe about since Christmas. I think it went on the market Christmas. So we're going to give it maybe another month or so, and we're not going to lower the price anymore. So if it doesn't sell at the 325, we're going to keep it as a rental.
Is it rented now, Michelle?
No, it's not. It's vacant. So we just finished it, like I said, around Christmas. So it still is just been, realtors have been showing it.
Okay.
But, the market's really slow and everything. Of course, my realtor would like for us to bring it down more, and that's not going to happen. I told him, no, that's not going to happen. If anything, we'll just keep it as a rental. Now, we also actually did a cash out refinance on our personal property, and we pulled that equity out and we started a second new build. So on the second new build, though, we're not even going to put it on the market. It's just going straight into the rental. We're going to keep it as a rental. Now, these are two houses that you're in nice neighborhoods. I think they're each 2,300 square feet, 4 bedroom, 2.5 bath, which is nothing that we would have built to rent. But given the way the market is now, we would rather, pull the equity out to do something to buy or build more instead of just giving it away for free. Now,
Yeah.
I want something for free, but I'm not willing to give away. I don't want to give away my stuff for free.
Yeah.
So we're just fortunate in that my husband has the construction company. I own the rental side. So we're able to, pivot just depending on how the market is. So
that's a good point. Having several legs under your stool, right? So that you can, that
Right.
diversity, right? That's actually
Right.
pretty smart. So Michelle, let me, just a couple other pointed questions for you, or maybe more like some statements. The cash out purpose for down, based on what I'm hearing you say and not having, dug into this visually with you recently or in the last month or so, cash out refinance for down payments so that you can get some cash flow immediately sounds like it would be advantageous to help support some of the losses that you guys are having to absorb right now, right?
Right, exactly.
And then considering, and this is just, we're spitballing here together, short-term rental, long-term rental, perhaps, and I'm having this conversation a lot, it's got to be in the right market, the right municipality, and it has to allow for it. But one of the things that I'm advising my investors to kind of diversify on that theme, finding a 2 to 4 unit property, perhaps a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, where in the right area, you might be able to accomplish a variety of variables with one property, right? You can mitigate some of the risk and use 1 or 2 of the units for a long-term rental, maybe 1 or 2 of the units for a short-term or even a mid-term. Those are doing the professional, traveling professionals. Those might be some things as, if you're in a situation similar to Michelle, right? Some things happened in 2022 that maybe we weren't prepared for, or that didn't work out the way that you wanted them to do. Mitigating as much of the loss, as much as the risk immediately would be my advice, Michelle, right? So we can certainly talk more about that if you want on a one-on-one basis. But for the rest of you, I think that the takeaway for me here is that Michelle has made some good moves and having some already knowing that she has that diversity and she's got different ways that she can move with either selling it or holding on to it as a rental, right? She had that forethought. She's got other assets that she can be pulling cash out of immediately to go and acquire more property, being able to take advantage of that, offsetting some of the losses that she's having. While it probably wasn't exactly as she wanted it to go, she has managed to keep the balance within her portfolio so that she can weather this and be prepared to take advantage of this particular cycle. Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate that very much. Let's talk on a one-on-one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, Michelle.
Anybody else there?
Thank you. Oh yeah, we've got a lot of questions. We probably got more questions than we can get to, so I'm going to curate them a little bit and keep you on
Okay.
here. So there are a couple of things I've come across with strategies of getting started or using other people's money, kind of a thing. Again, to speak to your, to stay on topic here with how to prepare to purchase. Do you have any advice on how to gather your cash together?
Yeah, so for those of you that are here with us today and you're new, you're kind of just getting into this, or even those that have been doing this for a long time, if you haven't already taken advantage, what you need to be doing is getting pre-qualified immediately. That's the first thing that my advice would lead you toward. Get in with us, get an application set in, gather your documents. Larry, you want to take what my next comment is going to be? It never gets old.
No,
it doesn't get old for me. Vials of blood and DNA samples.
Oh,
let's get
you're going to
those
do that
on file.
still? I thought we moved on to more technological terms.
2023. So so get your vials of blood, get your DNA samples, get your fingernail clippings, get everything ready and get it submitted with your application so that you know what your buying power is, right? One of the great value adds of Ridge continues to be the education that we can provide for our clients, that one-on-one personal experience that really dives into educating you from an underwriting perspective as it applies to your goals and certainly your qualifications, and then plant those seeds, man. So if you have not done that, anybody that's listening to my voice right now that has not applied for a mortgage, and from a company that really wants to cultivate what you can do with that application, not just a transactional one-off loan, but really will take you through the paces and help you formulate what you're going to do this year, how you're going to get there, what it's going to look like, what comes next. If you haven't done that, you should be doing it immediately. That's my first piece of advice. Once that's done, then we start to really focus on more granularly what market you want to be in and why, right? The why may be important in some cases. If you had your sights set on, I don't know, whatever market, Timbuktu market, and we find out that based on your strategy for that, it may not be feasible, we'll have to pivot. And we can help with that stuff too. Is it that you're in for more appreciation, right? You don't really need the cash flow right now. You really want to get more appreciation as long as it cash flows, right? It's not sucking you dry as long as it cash flows, but you're really more interested in appreciation. We need to start looking at the data. Where are we going to find that data, and how is it going to inform us to say that these particular markets over the next 3, 5x years is going to be a bigger appreciation play? Or maybe you really need that cash flow right now. Maybe you're in that cycle of your real estate investing. Then we need to focus on those markets because they do change. Things of that nature will change. So application, get pre-qualified, have those conversations, create an outline of what comes next in sequence. And then we want to start to identify the markets and why we're in those markets and make any necessary changes that come up. And then start taking applicable action, right? Taking action, making offers. While we're making those offers, are we going to start trying to negotiate down on price? Is it appropriately? Are we going to start asking the seller to pay towards our closing costs? Is it appropriate? If he or she won't pay towards our closing costs, what are our options next? We have all of those tools available to you that we can teach you, inform you, arm you to make sure that you are taking the absolute optimized advantage of what I believe 2023 is going to be for investors. So those would be let me just recap. Get your application in, talk to myself or one of our dedicated loan specialists about what your qualifications are, what your goals are, so that we can help create that outline. Then we start identifying what markets and why, and then we really start taking action to acquire, whether it's today or tomorrow or next month. Get those pieces in place so that you're ready to pull the trigger. If something comes across your desk that is appropriate, you're ready to rock, right? You're not stopping and then going back and getting pre-qualified and then coming up with your plan and then figuring out if this market is the one that you want to be in, right? That is the bass-ackwards way to do it.
I love how you just beat around the bush, Caeli. It is just crazy how you beat around the bush. I wish you were a little bit more clear.
I should be a little bit more forward.
You should probably be a little bit more direct.
I'll work on that.
So, there's a couple of questions about this too. John asked one that I think leads into this, again, getting prepared, right? So I know I was one of these folks, I think you said you were too, where we grabbed a home equity line of credit over the last few months, preparing for these opportunities. So walk us through a strategy of using that HELOC to acquire rental properties. Is there a method to your madness?
Absolutely. And I like that you brought up HELOC. I love the idea of a HELOC when it's available, if qualifications there, if the opportunity is appropriate, et cetera. The HELOC is very advantageous for a few reasons. Most specifically, I won't go down that rabbit hole. We don't have the time for that right now. But most specifically is that you're never going to be paying interest on funds you're not using. So the larger the home equity line of credit or line of credit, whether it's a home equity or business line of credit, whatever, the larger the better, because you'll never end up paying interest on anything that you're not using. But having access to it, should you need it for investing, is obviously my point. So getting a home equity line of credit, the all-in-one is by far and away my favorite. Circumstantially, right? If you have a 1% interest rate and your cash flow is not great, it may not make sense. We can talk more about that later. But getting the line of credit and just being ready once you have access to that, qualified, you've done your qualification, you've secured your line of credit, and having that available for the acquisition, for your down payment, so that when you find something, you're ready to rock. Now, you could do it a couple of different ways too. You could have it for your down payment, right? You're 20% down, you're 25% down, whatever it may be. Or those of you that are interested in BRRRR, and it doesn't even have to be BRRRR. So I want to preface by saying that while this is a BRRRR strategy, and for those of you that are new, BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, and refi. That's a strategy within real estate investing. Using a HELOC is a very common way in which they're going to gather the capital to pay cash for a property and then put some rehab into it, refinance it at an ARV after repair value, and then get a renter in there, yada, yada. Some may want to, for more leverage within this buyer's market, if they pay cash for a property that doesn't need rehab, that we're not looking at an ARV, but they simply want to, instead of a $200,000 asking price, maybe they offer 180, and because it's an all cash and they don't have to wait, maybe they've got that extra leverage to pay cash. Then what we're going to do afterwards is we're going to simply do a cash out refinance. We're going to leverage back as much as possible. Now, if the value comes in a little bit higher, great. Otherwise, we expect that we're going to leverage back the purchase price, 75, even 80%, depending on the transaction, on the loan type. And then they'll take that and reinfuse it back into the HELOC and do it again and again. So those would be the two things that I would say the benefit of having a HELOC available immediately is to your advantage.
Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. Thank you very much for that question, John. Preparing, right? So a lot of Q&A coming through. And by the way, gang, you are absolutely this has got to be one of the most engaging groups we've had all year, Caeli, all year.
They're ready. It's a new year.
It's a new year, right? Everybody's ready.
They've got their resolutions.
So keep the questions coming on the Q&A part of Zoom. That's great. This came up recently where a lot of folks want to get pre-approved. They want to start. They're worried about, do I need a property? So I'm helping guide them through the Q&A to say, listen, go ahead and jump over, send an email into info@ridgelendinggroup.com, or start your application on ridgelendinggroup.com, or dial the office at 855-747-4343 or 855-74-RIDGE. And the question comes up, it's come up a couple of times here with credit score. So, we've leveraged ways to manage through that, right, Caeli? We don't always have to do a hard credit score, and that might not be your best interest either, should it?
So if the question is, I don't want to have my credit pulled because I don't want an inquiry to damage my score, my comment would be there's a lot of bad information about credit and scoring and inquiries. First and foremost, one inquiry is not going to damage a very strong credit score. Credit scores are similar to interest rates in some ways in that they can change daily based on a whole variety of variables. How it relates to inquiries is the algorithms within the repositories, right? You guys know these as Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. You guys have heard those names before. The algorithms in there when inquiries are involved as it relates to a lower credit score is for an individual that's having his or her credit pulled for a variety of different reasons. Mrs. Jones went out and bought a new car, and then she got a mortgage, and then she got a flat screen TV. She opened up a department credit score, all of this within a small window of time. All of those different sources of inquiry, the algorithms think that this individual is about to become overextended. For the purpose, in our case, mortgage-related finance, the individual is allowed to have as many inquiries as he or she needs for the purpose of qualifying for a loan and shopping a loan without it adversely affecting your credit score. So I like to give you that information just as a heads up. The other thing I hear often is, as related to credit, is if I have an inquiry, it's going to drop my score 20 points or 5 points or 10 points or whatever they've heard or read. That's not how it works. In any case, if you have an 800 credit score or a 760 credit score, an extra inquiry probably will have this amount of impact on whether or not you can qualify and or qualify for the best rates and terms. 760 and above tends to be that benchmark for the best rates and terms. And then let me take that one step further. So let's say that you have a 760 and Mrs. Jones has a 740. All right. All of the things are equal in qualification. The difference in interest rate between the 760 and the 740 might be 1/8 of a point, largely dependent on your loan size. That might mean $5 a month, $6 a month, $3 a month, $12 a month. So credit score is something that we obviously want to maximize, and we have other tools and recommendations in which to do that as we start working together. But don't get hung up on an inquiry because it's not really what you think. All of that said, we do have the option to do a soft pull, so it won't affect the credit score, and we can get a baseline as if to at least get some initial qualification done for you and what your buying power might be, and set up that outline that I keep talking about. Otherwise, credit score isn't necessarily what you might think it is. Have a conversation with us and we'll walk through it.
Awesome stuff, Caeli. So to guide you through into that, you get somebody, they've gone through the pre-approval process, they've had their credit run on a hard pull or soft, whatever it is. What guidance, again, we're trying to talk and have an open conversation about what folks have done to be prepared to purchase. Do you find investors starting out or trying to make a decision, do they go for multi-unit? Do they stay with single family? What advice could you give on that?
Real quick, guys, I forgot to mention on the credit score, just as a sidebar, the credit report for most products, most loan products, is valid for 120 days. Okay, that's often a surprise to most people. So if you know that you're going to be doing something the next 4 months for sure, having it pulled now is perfectly fine. If you think you're 6-8 months out, then a soft pull is appropriate just to get the pre-qual done. Okay, enough about credit. The answer to your question, Larry, I would say I was having this conversation earlier. It's a top of mind topic. They want to know which is better. My advice is going to be diversification. A nice, well-rounded portfolio is really what I'm going to suggest based on what your goals are, short and long-term goals are, what your penchant is for risk averse or risk heavy. All of those things really need to be discussed in order for me to say, I think you should focus just on single family, or I think you should focus mostly on 2 to 4 units. But overall, I think a balance is what you guys should be looking at. Let's say that you're more risk averse. Okay, the general rule of thumb I'm going to give that individual that might be somewhere in their 40s or 50s is 70% of your portfolio for single family, right? The single family is going to carry a little bit less risk. And then 30% perhaps for 2 to 4 units. When we start comparing that same conversation to cash flow versus appreciation, similarly, I'm going to say 70 or 80% of your portfolio is cash flow heavy, as high a cash flow as you can get, and then maybe 20 or 30% of your portfolio, we really want to maximize more appreciation, right? So it depends on the individual and their circumstances and their qualifications and all of the things that we continue to talk about. But let me just kind of go back and revisit. 40, 50 years old, fairly risk averse, right? They don't really want to take much risk or as little as possible. I would give them that from the cash flow, single family versus 2 to 4, and then maybe cash flow versus appreciation. It's very individual though, right, guys? I mean, it's going to be specific to variety of variables that only apply to you and nobody else.
And it could also depend upon the market. I mean, some markets singles do better versus multis.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Generally speaking, 2 to 4 unit is going to give you a little bit more cash flow, right? But they're harder to sell. That may not end up being true for very much longer. I'm finding that the next generation of home buyers, those that are going to live in the property, they're finding or they're learning about these house hacks. So it used to be that 2 to 4 units weren't as desirable or had more risk for one of the reasons anyway, that they were harder in the exit strategy. They were harder to sell. I'm not sure that that's going to be true for much longer if it is today. Anyway.
Is that another, Caeli? What do we call those things? Visions? No, I don't know what we call those.
Premonition? No,
premonition, projection. All right. So a few more questions here before we end the day. And if we don't get your question, we'll actually email you directly. So one of the beautiful things about Zoom is we have your information. We know who you are. So we can, if we don't get your question, we can actually answer afterwards, as creepy as that sounds. But it's important.
And if you guys, if you guys want to call versus an email, just let us know that too. And one of us will give you a call. Otherwise, we'll respond via email today if we can.
Absolutely. So so Debbie asked a really good question because we did a big announcement, right? Freddie Mac, it's changing its cash out rules with loans closing on or after March 7th. So do you want to speak to that, Caeli, so everybody understands the time frames?
Yeah, thanks, Debbie, for the question. So if you guys read our announcement, Freddie came out. We have still not heard from Fannie. So this is impactful potentially, but not as much as you may expect because you still have Fannie, okay? Depending on how you acquired the property, whether you paid cash for it or you use leverage, and also if your intent is to pull cash out. And there's often some confusion between pulling cash out. An individual that has some hard money loan, right, associated with the acquisition of this property, that's looking to get a new loan to just pay that lien off, they think that that is cash out, right? But unless you're actually getting cash in hand, or you've got to pay off debt, or you're paying off a second lien, like a HELOC that was in second lien position, right? It's not going to be cash out if you're just simply paying off an existing lien. That's called a rate and term refinance. So just to really be clear on that, unless you're getting cash in your hands or paying off debt, that would also be considered cash out, right? Because it's going to pay off on your behalf, or you're paying off a first and a second, right? Those would be considered cash out, in which case Freddie's rule says that you have to own the property 12 months. It used to be 6. You have to own the property 12 months in order to do a cash out refinance. If leverage was used, if you paid cash for the property, your sourced and seasoned funds, you are still eligible to get that cash out up to whatever LTV the guideline restricts per property type and different variables. There is no seasoning. Okay, this, I'll tell you, just talking about it myself to all of you, I even start to get confused. So what I would say is that we have, we made a cheat sheet. Larry, if we could we get that sent to everybody on today's call so that they can see that metric that we wrote out for them that gives the kind of an example of different scenarios and when you have to wait and when you don't?
100%.
Okay, so you guys will get something. I should have had it, I should have had that available. I thought that would be a question today. You guys will get that. It should outline for you, if this, then that, if this, then that. Do you have to wait the seasoning? Do you not have to wait the seasoning? It'll all be outlined for you so you can go and refer back to that if you need it. But like I said, well, it was pretty big news, and I half anticipate Fannie coming out with something similar soon. For right now, today, we still have Fannie, so it shouldn't be too much of a deterrent for most of us, I would say. But effective date, oh, you know what, Larry, you may have to remind me.
Yeah.
It has to close. No,
It's the note date. So we need to make sure that the note date, if the note date is on or after March 7th, 2023, the new seasoning requirement for Freddie Mac is in place.
good. Thank you.
You got it.
Thanks for the question, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie. We're going to take one more question. Michael raised his hand. So Michael, we're going to go ahead, and Zoom says you're now allowed to talk. So please let us know what's on your mind.
Hi, Michael.
And so while Michael is hopefully getting the technology working, if not, we'll go ahead and give it, here we go. Mike, you able to talk? I'm showing that you just unmuted, muted. Shucks. Mike, throw your question in chat. Sorry about that. Don't know what happened. Blame it on the solar flare. Caeli, we're going to go on to one more question here. And this one is, pardon me, a little bit. Oh, there we go, Mike. Yep.
Great, thanks. Sorry about that. Caeli, I put this in the chat. I have a $267,000 SBA loan that I got last year at 3.75 fixed for 30 years for my real estate, house, and land biz. I'm considering using it to buy a rental house because I can't seem to allocate it all right now. I am considering, well, my question is, instead of buying just one house for cash on this SBA loan, could I get, let's say, 4 loans?
Hell yeah.
And use the SBA loan for down payments, and because I also have excellent credit and I have a good W-2 job and have got some good income in my LLC.
I think that if you do the math, Michael, you'll find that leverage using 75, 80%, where you're putting 20% down on 3 or 4 properties, will exponentially increase for you versus one cash acquisition. So 100% yes. Double check the rules of, I don't know if there's any restrictions or anything like that related to the terms of that loan. So maybe you have to double check that. The other thing you could do potentially, if you couldn't find all the properties in enough time, or who knows, whatever might come up, you could pay cash for one, and then you could leverage back out against that. Borrowed funds are non-taxable, right? So, and then have it at your disposal to put down on. So there may be some advantage to doing it that way. But otherwise, yeah, I think for sure, utilizing however much of that you have earmarked for multiple properties versus one, 100%.
So if I were to do that, does it throw into whack my, how can I say, my loan to value, not loan to value, but
Debt to income?
my debt coverage ratio? Yeah, my debt to income ratio, because I don't know, does that
Really
screw up your
shouldn't.
underwriting?
No, it
No?
really shouldn't, Michael. Now it's going to depend on what your DTI is today and kind of which bucket you're going to fall into. Let me ask you a quick question. Do you have a primary home expense? Like, do you rent or have a mortgage where you live?
Right, I have a mortgage, and it's about $1,800 a month with taxes.
Okay. And do you have a rental today that you've owned? Have you owned real estate for at least the last 12 months?
Yes, I own
Okay.
another rental house in Alabama.
Perfect. In that case, in the acquisition year, Michael, and this is important, you guys, very different than the Schedule E. You've heard me talk about Schedule E ad nauseum. Acquisition year formula, Fannie Freddie conventionally, and even non-conventionally, will allow us to use 75% of the gross rents. So if you're buying 4 properties, we may have to sequence the closing of those properties. I won't know that yet. But as long as on a worst case scenario, they are rented, I'm going to give you 75% of the gross rents to offset the mortgage payment. Even with higher interest rates in the market that we find ourselves in today, you guys, I have yet to run that formula, 75% of the gross rents minus the PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, right? Whatever that number is, I have yet to see it be a negative number. So Michael, when you think about it from that perspective and your debt to income ratio, whatever you start out with today will almost certainly be that or less when you've acquired these 3 or 4 properties, because the income at 75% minus the mortgage payment all in will probably be a positive number. And if not, maybe it's just a break even at the worst case scenario. So DTI should actually improve, if I had to guess, as a result of that activity.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you. And I'll have to consider if this is something I really want to do. The funds are supposedly earmarked for inventory or other, it's SBA loan. So I can kind of use it for whatever I want in my business. But my business is fix and flip real estate or land acquisitions. So, I mean, in general, the funds are supposed to be, let's say, used for inventory. Well, guess what I buy? I buy real estate.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I would agree.
I would just remind you that we cannot provide any legal or accounting
Larry.
guidance at all whatsoever. So if any decisions you're trying to make, Michael, with regards to the ability for you to use SBA funds, please seek proper counsel from your professionals.
Sure. Thank you, Larry.
You got
Thanks for covering my backside, Larry. But Michael, if you want to have a one-on-one, get with Carly and we can schedule some time, sir.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
We're here to help,
Sure.
and we're also here to make sure that we're all okay.
Yes.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you for
Well,
that.
Caeli said.
We got it on recording.
I have witnesses. Thanks, Michael.
Awesome. So I think that is going to bring us to the end of today. There are still 9 open questions, remarkably, or maybe less. So we'll get to it. Again, for those that asked the question, we've got it in here. We're going to get you an answer back, either electronically or by phone. And if you have any questions about anything that you've watched today, or comments or follow-ups, we do this every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Feel free to join the brand new Zoom registration, and we will have chat enabled next time, possibly. I'm not sure. Maybe we should keep chat disabled, Caeli. Just use Q&A. I'm not sure. We'll have to think about this.
We'll have video for sure, I think, though.
We'll have to see about that. I have to look into that.
Okay. All right.
And I'm making no promises on tape here. But Caeli,
Okay.
we've had a great day, and last comments are for you.
Thank you, Larry. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you this time next week. And I hope that my message was well received. If you want to get into real estate, call us, apply. Let's find your path forward. It may not be the traditional path. If you're worried about qualification or you're worried about this, I promise you there's almost always a solution that can move us to the next phase. So let us help. We're here to do that. We look forward to working with each and every one of you, and we'll see you next week.